All right. We are live. Hello, you guys. Thank you so much for your patience. So sorry for running a bit late this morning, but hello. Let me just check some settings really quick. All right. Everything looks good on my end. Hello, Chi-Chan. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I feel radiant today. It's a good day. It is a good day. Hello, April. Hello, Empress. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Happy Sunday. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Wonderful weekend so far. Just going back really quick. 1 second. Hi, guys. Okay, sorry about that. I have a couple of people that couldn't make it live today because of time zone differences. Left some questions that I want to make sure I get to. So I was just opening that tab, making sure that I was on it. Hello, guys. Hello, Mimi. Hello, IK. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. David, hello. Welcome. It's good to have you here. I'm glad your battery's all charged up this time. Fantastic. We'll go ahead and jump in a moment. Just a moment. I like to give it just a minute or two at the beginning to let people come on in and join us, and give people a second to get notified and come join before diving on in. But we will get started in some Q&As here in just a second. And I am excited. Hello, you guys. Hello. Hello, DJN. Hello, African Empire. You are so welcome. I really love this Sunday morning chill vibes. It's super, super relaxing. And I know, it's easier for people to join on Sunday, typically speaking. So yeah, I'm really happy that I made the switch too, because I absolutely look forward to this. Hey, Vivian. Hi. Hi. Whew. Some caffeine. Wonderful. Lazy Sundays indeed. And we got a guest today. Got my cat joining us, although she's a little mad at me right now because I won't give her all the treats. But she's going to be hanging out and vibing with us this morning. Hello, Courtney. Transplanting lavender for my new lavender farm. Oh, that sounds amazing. I love lavender so much. So much. Oh, that sounds heavenly. Hello, Matt. Welcome. Happy to have you here. Found your channel about 2 weeks ago. So glad I did. Oh, thank you. It's good having you here. Hey, John. Finally had a small manifestation. Yay. Yay. Happy to hear that. Get some momentum going is always a good thing. All right. So let's go ahead and shoot. Where did I put my notes? Hang on 1 second, guys. Oh, well. Guess that's not here. Okay. So welcome, you guys. Again, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for joining. I hope you are having a wonderful weekend and a very lazy Sunday. Here to do some Q&As today. dive into some questions. I did have, like I mentioned, I have a couple questions that I'll be sure to answer from people that couldn't be here due to time zones being a thing and whatnot. But yeah, before we go ahead and jump in, um, just a couple quick things to announce. So, Mindset Mastery Program, my coaching program. If you have not registered, get more information down below. Uh, Onboarding starts tomorrow, Monday the 27th, and the day before my birthday. We will be all next week. I'm going to be helping people onboarded, getting started. The first official day. Uh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Where'd it go? Is the 3rd of April. Is the 3rd of April. But we're going to be, getting the group together, getting people onboarded and whatnot, getting this ball rolling. I have made a ton of new additions to this cycle. So if you have been if you've previously done my Mindset Mastery course, my 12-week program, you will have access to all of the new additions, the hypnosis, the live classes, implementation of techniques. I'm finding more and more that with guidance and maybe like walking through things with people in real time is immensely helpful. So anyways, there's been a ton of additions added. If you're interested in learning more, interested in registering, I've got all that down in the description box, but it's going to be a lot of fun. It is going to be so much fun. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. Oh, excuse me. Tabia Daniela has a good question. Hey, Missy, jealousy in the context of relationships. It is a very painful feeling. How would you go about resolving it? Yeah, that is a fantastic one. It's a feeling that absolutely is terrible, as you noted, and as a lot of people unfortunately know. And it's a very common one, unfortunately. I certainly had a lot of jealousy, um, suffered from a lot of jealousy with my person and even previous relationships. I guess the first thing that we want to do is get to the root of where that jealousy is stemming from. And 99.9% of the time, it's a feeling of not being good enough or feeling strongly that there's some sort of competition. Um, in regards to other people being it's a feeling of being threatened because you don't feel in that context good enough, right? So with that, getting to the root of that and seeing what the cause is, I mean, it does have to shed some light on what that dominant state has been, what it has looked like for you. And the first thing that I did, because I had a lot of insecurities, a lot of feelings of jealousy, a lot of fear around competition and other women being, better or prettier or smarter. The first thing that I did was, I went back and revised anything that may have left an impression, right? So instances in my past where I wasn't chosen or where I was abandoned for somebody else, I revised instances that sort of planted that seed of not being good enough, of not feeling chosen, of, that insecurity. I revised instances where those were seeds that were planted, any events or memories that I had. Um, and really, that and the other important thing is meditation or immersing yourself in a feeling or a state of um, being the prize, being ultimately the one that you want to be, confident, right? It's a knowing that there's truly nothing that we need to fear as far as the 3D circumstances. Because if everyone is you pushed out, then there is no such thing as competition, right? So really creating scenes and creating these imaginal acts and letting myself get creative with scenarios that I would ideally like to experience, right? Um, Imagining instances where, I was confirmed that I was chosen, that I was good enough, that I was the priority, and things of that nature. So really, imagination taking you to the place of there is no competition. There is no whatever the root of that jealousy is, imagine the opposite of that and put yourself in that state. Like feel your don't just think of it like, yeah, that would be nice if I was super confident and didn't have any worry. No, like put yourself there in imagination. Really truly let yourself explore what that would feel like, what that would be like, because we manifest what we feel to be true for us, right? So revision, getting to, the root of where that jealousy is stemming from, and ultimately and more importantly, just imagining yourself as somebody who is full and complete in what they sorry, I just had a delivery driver go by. Just seeing yourself as full and complete and always the priority, right? And really let yourself fix on that. Hope that makes sense. You guys are so sweet. Any tips for not checking the 3D? At times I feel compelled to check, sometimes it goes well, other times it completely knocks me off. Yeah, I the 3D is certainly the bane of our existence, on this journey. So tips for not checking the 3D, and admittedly, that one is challenging for us and, for most of us because of the 3D world that we live in, right? We're constantly immersed in this 3D experience, so we feel inclined to get answers through the 3D, through checking the 3D, but we're never gonna find the answers out in the 3D. At least, we're not gonna get the answers that are ideal depending on the state that we've been occupying. If you are feeling anxious, like you need to get an answer because the fear of the unknown is getting to you, that's probably not an ideal state you want to try to go looking from, if that makes sense. And, in your case, you sort of imply, like, maybe checking social media, right? One of the ways that we check the 3D is through going on social media, checking that person's profile, stalking that person if it's a specific person, things like that. The first thing that I would recommend, honestly, unfollow. You don't have to block that person, you don't have to, like, delete that person, but unfollow. And if that means even taking a break from social media, I would do that because, again, we're not gonna find anything in the 3D that is good and ideal from a place of feeling desperate and anxious and scared and uncertain. Like, that's not gonna typically get us the answers we're looking for anyways. So, the first thing that I would do, like, if it's really been a struggle to not check, I would, maybe take a break from social media. Um, I know you can deactivate your profile without deleting it outright. It'll, just basically put it to sleep for 30 days or whatever. But just taking steps like that, right? Um, and really just coming back and remembering the first principle. Be still and know that I am God. Your imagination is God. Like no 3D circumstance is permanent. No 3D circumstance, good or bad, is ever gonna, you know, deter what's gonna happen ultimately. Like, even if the 3D is opposite of what you want to have happen, it doesn't matter. It truly doesn't matter. So I would, if you need to take the extra steps to remove any temptation in the 3D from checking the 3D, I would honestly do that. I know it's not easy. And I would also just keep coming back to that first principle. Keep like reminding yourself, remembering that there is nothing in the 3D that's gonna give you answers as like ultimate truth. The ultimate truth is within. It's in here, always. Thanks for your awesomeness. Oh, thank you, Tony. Thank you. Big hi from Australia. Hello. Hello, hello. I need to work on my self-concept, but after 2 years of sleep affirmations, I'm not there yet. Can you help? Absolutely, Samara. So, working on self-concept, I know that's such a very broad and general it's a very, like, what does that mean? It's actually gonna mean different things for different people, like, specifically how you can go about working on your self-concept, and it's almost become like this buzz phrase in this community, but your self-conception, your self-concept is your ideas and beliefs and assumptions. It's who you believe you are, who you believe other people are. So the stories attached to other people, what we perceive their beliefs are, how we think the world works. I mean, it encompasses all of that. So in the how we change our self-concept, like how we truly begin to change the self-concept is through imagination, right? So who is the person and what is the version of you that is living their dream life? Like, what does that look like? What does that feel like? And really begin to like consciously direct your attention to that state in your day to day. Because sleep affirmations, if you're listening to sleep affirmations, but the remainder of your day to day is spent dwelling in the old story and ruminating on the past and, fears of what you don't want, it's gonna make it so things are stuck. Basically, you're gonna feel stuck. So I'd be incredibly mindful of your mental diet in your day to day and really be conscious of what you desire to experience and go there in your imagination, whether that's inner conversations, whether that's visualizing, whether that's affirmations that resonate with you, that really help you to tap into that state of consciousness. But do not overlook doing that in the day to day at 100%. Hmm. I want to manifest. DJ, that's a really interesting question. I'm just to be sure, I want to manifest a state that's opposite to waiting on my person. How does it actually feel when you can switch your attention off of them after imagining the end and while actually waiting? So you want to manifest a state that's opposite to waiting. Yeah. Yeah, the feeling of waiting still implies that we don't have it. It still is awareness of the absence of the desire, right? If it feels like we're waiting, we're not living in the end, are we? To put it simply, how does it actually feel when you can switch your attention off of them after imagining the end and while actually waiting? So the whole point of thinking from that desired state in imagination, the whole point of putting yourself there and really getting familiar with what that would feel like is that is what is going to ultimately carry over in your day to day, right? So if you are thinking and living from the place of that desired state and imagination, you're not going to feel, you're not going to continue to feel the absence of them. It's not gonna feel like that anymore. It's gonna feel, you're gonna feel more and more just that general sense of satisfaction, right? You may even observe the 3D separation, that they're not here in the 3D, but it's gonna feel like they're not here yet, but it doesn't matter because inevitably the 3D has to catch up anyways, right? It's sort of that feeling, and then that's what we're wanting going for. Because even if we do observe the 3D has not fully conformed yet, we want to get to a place where that doesn't matter because it's a done deal. It's already finished. Or that satisfaction of like, I don't have anything I need to fear. There's nothing to fear here. Because what I imagine, where I live from, ultimately it has to come to pass. It has to. That's the law. So, wait, where'd your question go? So, how does it actually feel when you can switch your attention off of them after imagining? It feels like it just feels like a normal knowing that, this is inevitable. right? Or even if that might be a strong word, but it's just a general state of peace, security, satisfaction. It certainly doesn't feel like longing or anxiously hoping and waiting. It doesn't feel like that at all. But if you continue to think from that desired place in imagination, you will inevitably it might catch up first internally, then it will externally. Like, the feeling will catch up to you first, perhaps before it shows up in the 3D. Oh, thank you, Chi-chan. Hello, Apollo. Hey, Missy, can you talk about living from the end and living in the end when manifesting money? Absolutely. Yeah. So living in the end when it comes to manifesting money, um, I mean, first I would absolutely feel into and resonate with, or feel into what resonates the most about abundance. For me personally, and coming from somebody who grew up very impoverished, did not have much of anything, was constantly broke. Um, what I did was I didn't focus on manifesting money. Like, money was not the main objective for me ultimately, because it felt there was a huge disconnect between myself and the idea of having a lot of money. I wasn't familiar with that so much, and it felt more of a challenge to connect to that. But what was easier was connecting to the feeling of freedom, connecting to the feeling of security, because that felt more like believable or relatable. Like, I had moments I could connect to that easier, but I focused on the feeling in the state of freedom, the feeling in state of security, right? Because it's not even so much the money itself, but what the money can do for us, like how we feel. We're looking for the feeling of what having a lot of money gives us, what it provides us. And really that's the feeling of freedom and security. That's really, like the peace of mind of knowing that you're not bound to something that you don't want. You're not maybe bound to a job that you don't like. You're not constantly on edge or in fear that, something happens. It could, have a huge impact on your life. If the car breaks down, if a kid gets sick, that's it. You're not constantly living in that stress and that fear. So if we had money, it would feel relief. It would feel like it would feel satisfying knowing that we had the freedom to do anything that we wanted to do. If we want to go travel, if we want to, you know, start up another business, if we want to donate to charity, if we want to help friends and family, we can do that, right? So ultimately, I focused on the feeling that would come with having a lot of money, and not just on money itself. Like, instead of imagining, a certain dollar amount in my bank account, I just tapped into the feeling of freedom, and you naturally start to notice that abundance, that feeling of abundance creep up and just start to envelop you. It's a really, really wonderful feeling. But I would start there and just focus on the general feeling of what that would feel like. If you had more than enough money i- to get by, to do whatever you wanted, like, what would that be like? And what would you do? What would a day in the life look like for you? You know, what are some dreams or aspirations that you have or have had that you could actually achieve, and then see yourself doing that, right? And really get familiar with that. Oh, oh, I totally lost my spot. Sorry guys, one sec. Where was I? How do you know where you are at in your manifestation journey? It feels like I'm one step closer every day, but some days I feel like 5 steps back. I don't know what to do. So how do you know where you are in your manifestation journey? That's a good question. So I get in relation to seeing things come to fruition in the 3D, I assume. How do you know where you're at? Um, the best gauge that we have to be able to tell where we are or what state we occupy, um, is our general reactions, right? The natural thoughts that come up for us, the natural feelings that we embody in our day to day without trying, without trying, like without consciously trying to redirect or suppress. The natural thoughts and reactions and moods is going to indicate, or it's going to show you what state you are occupying or what state you have been occupying the most, more predominantly than not. Um, that's why I'm saying, like, that's why I said earlier about the 3D is not the best gauge to tell you where you are in consciousness. It's it's not. But the best way to tell is what we're thinking and doing and reacting internally, naturally, right? So paying close attention to where that is in our journey, will give us a good idea, and it also gives us an idea of where we might need to focus our attention more, where we may need to, give our attention and concentration to, right? So if I'm constantly noticing in my day to day, I'm falling back into that state of, oh God, is this going to happen? Is this really going to work? I'm scared. I don't know what to do. If that is a feeling, that's telling me my faith is wavering. I'm not trusting myself. I'm not, I'm having moments of doubt. Well, how do I combat that? Well, I can test the law, right? I can prove this to myself, continue to build my faith. Um, and part of doing that is just through observation of my thoughts and what's happening in the 3D around me. Because if the law is real, then I should start to see correlations there. And that's just an example. That's just an example. But really start to pay attention of where you are internally. That's how you kind of gauge. Have you heard about wait. Oh, I'm all over the place. I'm sorry, guys. I think I missed some back here. From a psych standpoint, is it possible to be unable to convince yourself something is real in your mind without any hints, especially without any hints of evidence as you go? So, from a psychological standpoint, is it possible to be unable to convince yourself something is real in your mind, especially without any hints of evidence as you go? So, is it possible that you can't convince yourself that something is real in your mind? Um, I would argue no. No. If you're asking, so is it possible that somebody is unable to convince themselves that something is real in imagination, um, without evidence in the 3D, right? Um, and at first, it's going to feel like that's naturally the case. At first, we are very, very, very familiar with 3D, and to us, like, our conviction going into this is that we need proof for something to be real. We need to see evidence for something to be real in the 3D. Like, that's very much hardwired into the vast majority of us. So, at first, it does feel very improbable or almost impossible to be able to convince yourself that something is real without 3D proof. I hope that makes sense. But you can always get to a place where you can always get to a place inevitably where you do have conviction. Like, that is, and then that is ultimately what the aim is. The aim is to continue to turn, like, the more that you go within, the more that you play in imagination, the more that you strengthen that imagination muscle, as I always say, you're going to have it's going to feel more and more real to you. Imagination is going to feel more and more real to you. And we've all had moments like that randomly in our lives. Maybe we had a dream that felt so real, or, we got sucked up in a movie or a book that felt so real that we started reacting based on what was going on with the characters in the movie. Well, that's clearly not real. A movie is fake. It's all not true, but we're still reacting as if it's happening to us. You know what I mean? So we all have the ability to do this, if that's what you're asking, um, to be able to suspend any disbelief because the 3D doesn't show us evidence. I mean, yeah, yeah, we can all do that. It takes practice. It takes practice because we all are very sold on the idea that the 3D is real and the imagination's make believe, but we can absolutely get to that place where we do have that inner conviction. 100%. What do you think causes somebody to manifest someone to get ghosted slash abandoned by people that promise not to do that to you? If everyone is you pushed out, how do you abandon yourself? That's a good question. So, what causes people to show up in the way that they show up is our beliefs and convictions, our beliefs and assumptions, right? That's sort of the entire premise of the law of assumption. Hence the name, the law of assumption. Whatever we assume, whatever we believe to be true, is what's going to become our experience. So if I have the belief that somebody is going to ghost me or that, maybe it's not safe to get close to people because they're just going to wind up leaving or ghosting you, which I absolutely used to have convictions like that, based on the experiences that I had. But if that is my assumption, then that is what is going to continue to materialize in the 3D, unconsciously. Unconsciously. I mean, we're not, most of us are not consciously trying to make something happen in that regard. This is subconscious, mind you. Nobody wants to feel ghosted. Nobody wants to feel abandoned, of course. But if that has been, through an experience, through the 3D experience, that has formed a belief, then that is, I mean, that's kind of the textbook. Everyone is you pushed out. Everybody's going to continue to show up and react and respond and treat you the way that we assume they're going to treat us or how we assume people to treat us in general. So if everyone is you pushed out, how do you abandon yourself? So it's not so much that you abandon yourself as you have a belief or assumption that people abandon you, if that makes sense. Um, Unless I misunderstood the question, but yeah. And that's why, like, we can take the 3D as feedback. If we're ever not sure, if we're ever uncertain, look at the 3D as feedback. If people are showing up in a certain way, it is still a belief or assumption that you hold. But yeah, ultimately, good news though, we can always change those. Beliefs feel like a law to us. Beliefs can feel so convincing and so definite, but it's never the case. You can change any belief. And that is the good news. Speaking of imaginative scenes and settings, for worlds within worlds, can I imagine myself talking to someone from the other reality? Yeah. Yeah, we can go anywhere in imagination. We can go anywhere in imagination. That's the beauty of it. There are no limits to what we are able or capable of imagining. That's the beauty here. Um, it might feel challenging to really go outside of what we believe is normal. Um, we may have to practice kind of exercising the boundaries of what we think is possible and real for us, but we can absolutely imagine literally anything. We can go literally anywhere. It's the imagination is infinite. Miss A, what's up, Robbie? Robkey? Robkey. I'm currently in contact with my SP. I've always initiated contact, he always responds. My question is this considered messing with the middle? Should I just not be in contact with him? That's a good question. And I actually, Empress, I just made a video recently talking about messing with the middle, maybe a couple weeks ago. like 2 weeks ago. It's a fairly recent video. I would definitely check it out if you haven't watched it yet, um, because there is a lot of misconception around messing with the middle and what that means. From what you're describing, no, I would not consider that messing with the middle. However, that said, I would absolutely make sure that we're paying attention to when we have the urge to do something, if we are feeling driven to take some sort of action, I would really take a moment to pause and see where that's stemming from. Um, and like, what are like, if we're feeling moved to do something, are we being moved from a place of feeling like this is the natural thing to do? Do we feel confident that this is a good thing to do? Or feeling like just at ease about it? Or are we feeling anxious? Are we feeling like I need to reach out to this person because I need to get answers, or I need to, you know, make sure that they don't forget about me? Or like, if it's stemming from a place of fear or anxiety, something that is not ideal, I would not take action from that state. I would not take action from any kind of premise like that. If we're being moved to do something from a state of fear, it's probably not going to it's probably we're not gonna see the results that we want to see, um, to put it simply. Yeah. Messing with the middle is basically just conditioning our desire. Like, when we condition our desire, when we put some kind of like, "Oh, something needs to happen first before I can even go to the end and imagine this outcome. Something needs to happen before I can experience this in my 3D." We basically create some sort of like obstacle or step in the way of our desire. Like, anything that is keeping us from just going straight to the end, basically. That's messing with the middle. Best way to remove a person from your life who is a major part of it. Best way to remove a person from your life. Revision. Revision. 100%. Um, yeah, we can look at revision as just, if there's somebody in our life who we do not desire to continue to um, experience contact with, if there was something that happened, you can always revise the event that happened, or you can even just imagine confirmation that they moved away, right? That they went somewhere else. So you can even imagine having a conversation with somebody and hearing them confirm that this person moved away. I mean, it could even be that simple. I am able to stay on top of my thoughts during the day, but when I'm in and out of sleep, I have intense thoughts about the old story and what I don't want. Why is this happening? That's a really good question, Emma. You're able to stay on top of your thoughts during the day? Uh, I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. Do you mean not entertaining those thoughts throughout the day? Like, not entertaining any thoughts that you don't like? Are you talking about flipping thoughts? Are you talking about, like, I guess I'm kinda confused with what you mean stay on top of thoughts. I'm assuming that you mean focus on the new story, but when I'm in and out of sleep, I have intense thoughts about the old story. So, dreams are a um, really big and fantastic indicator of what is going on with us subconsciously, or anything that is coming up for us when we're in and out of sleep. Um, it's kind of giving you a window into what is going on subconsciously. Sleep is the doorway to the subconscious mind, basically. Um, so what things that we're dreaming or things that we're feeling as we're coming in and out of sleep are good indications of what we may still be hanging on to subconsciously. Um, yeah, yeah. I would look at it though, just like the 3D. I would look at dreams and any of those just as feedback, kind of giving sort of confirmation as to where we are, where we're dwelling, like actually dwelling, right? Subconsciously. I would look at it as feedback. Okay, I'm still having a lot of these thoughts of the old story, these feelings related to the old story. So clearly I am still in some, at some level of consciousness, I'm holding on to this. Okay, now I know. Now I know I need to continue to, you know, in the day to day, I really need to be mindful as to what I'm entertaining and where I'm going in consciousness. Like, not just flipping every single negative thought, but are you occupying that new state in your day to day? Are you doing it before bed? Are you doing it when we're waking up in the morning, taking advantages of those windows when we're groggy and sleepy? Those are powerful windows. Guys, if you're not taking advantage of those windows before bed and in the morning, I would absolutely 1000% recommend doing so. 100%. Is it true that our subconscious is a part of a collective consciousness? The same as conscious is it true that our subconscious is a part of a I'm so sorry, I can't read. Let's try this again. Is it true that our subconscious mind is a part of a collective subconscious mind, the same as consciousness, which is why telepathy is possible? That's a really interesting question, John. And so is our subconscious connected to um, a collective subconscious? Well, I mean, in a sense, yes. Um, it's our connection to God, awareness, consciousness, right? Consciousness, that is God, right? Um, the awareness that we have, that is aware of our thoughts, that is aware of our actions and our 3D, that awareness is God. And very much the subconscious mind is in conjunction with God. Um, yeah, hence why, whatever we accept subconsciously is what we wind up materializing. Um, which is why telepathy is possible. I mean, yeah, in a sense, if I understand your question correctly, in a sense, and telepathy is possible when we, sort of tap into that state. We can absolutely have conversations with somebody um, without saying words. 100%. If you're occupying that state of, whatever you want to communicate with that person, you're gonna move into the state where they're gonna show up like that, if that's what you mean. If that's what you mean. I might be a little bit confused. Yes, there is a collective consciousness, there is a collective I mean, there is just collective consciousness, right? Consciousness is all that is. Um, so I guess where I'm confused is you're saying let me just put it this way. Consciousness is all that exists. That is God. That awareness, that consciousness that you have is the same that everybody has. That is God. The subconscious mind is absolutely in connection with that awareness or God, that I am, which makes everything possible. I need to make more videos about I am and awareness. I think that would probably help make some sense of all this. Hi, Missy. Is it okay if I imagine different scenes, all of them after marriage with my SP? I do not like imagining the same scene after 5 days. Will it yield the same results? I mean, yeah, imagining multiple scenes, will it yield the result? Yeah. We don't have to stick to the same exact scene every single time, every single day if we I mean, if it feels like it's easier to keep your concentration by doing so, if it's easier to kind of sort of keep the focus and keep your mind from wandering, um, great. That's all, but we don't have to. Um, no, we can imagine different scenes. I mean, we already do that, don't we? We're already naturally, like, thinking from so many different premises. We have so many different imaginal scenes going through our mind throughout the day-to-day, just in general, right? Not even about our manifestation, but, like, think about what we're already naturally doing and just try to apply that, in that same sense. So, yeah, we can have multiple scenes, that's totally fine. How do we know when we are ready to reach out to SP? Haven't spoken in almost 3 weeks. He said he was getting depressed. Didn't respond to last text and haven't heard from him since. Been working on self concept. How do we know when we're ready to reach out? When you have an inspired action, you will you'll just act on it. Basically, you'll know. You will know. It will not be anything that you can mistake. If I would almost go as far to say, if you have to question it, then it's probably not inspired. Probably not, because when you are feeling inspired to take action, when inspired action is happening, you're just gonna feel so inclined to do it. It's just gonna naturally happen, without even putting a thought so much into what's going on. It's just gonna be like the natural course of things playing out. If you have to stop and question it, if you have to really think about, should I call, should I not, um, I would really be careful of that. I'd be careful of that because whenever we're feeling an urge to do something, whenever we're feeling the urge to take some kind of action, we really want to pay attention to where that's stemming from. Is it stemming from a place of fear? And if so, we don't want to we don't want to take any action from that. And we have to be honest with ourselves. That's something that I cannot stress enough. God cannot be mocked. We cannot lie to ourselves and say "Oh, we're great. I'm feeling inspired to do this," when we're really not. We can't trick ourselves. So, you will know when it's inspired action, when it's genuinely inspired action, you will know because you will feel so moved to just do it. It'll feel like the most obvious and natural thing in the world. Yeah, yeah. That's the long and short of it. How would you go about with saying affirmations throughout the day? That's a good question. So I've actually made a couple videos about affirmations. You can always go and check them out on my channel. I go a lot more into detail in those videos. But basically, uh, how I would personally go about affirmations, I would word them or write them in a way that I can sort of connect to or resonate with. I mean that's for me personally. I've always had much better success when it was affirmations that I thought that I could feel into, that I could sort of get excited with, if that makes sense, and things like that. Yeah. I was never much of a fan of just, robotic affirmations. I mean, some people will swear by them, I'm not gonna discredit it, um, but for me, I've always for me, the key and truly has always been the feeling. Really, the feeling is the secret, always. Always, always, always. So yeah, I would word affirmations or put them in a way that felt inspiring or I was able to connect to. They felt possible or believable, and things like that. I was never able to connect to affirmations that felt so far removed from where I was, if that makes sense. What would you say is the one key thing for manifestation? I hear so much it gets confusing. That's a good question. That's a good question, Alibi. What is the one key thing for manifestation? Um, and I know everybody's gonna probably have a different opinion. Everybody's gonna say something different. The feeling of naturalness. The feeling of naturalness. If we're talking about manifesting something long term and keeping it around, if we're talking about maintaining a new state of consciousness, we want it to feel natural for us to be there. It needs to be almost like a natural part of us. It just feels normal to us. It just feels obvious to us. But that feeling of naturalness, I would say, is the key. If we're talking about bringing something into the 3D and keeping it around, because we can manifest something and then see it go away again. I mean, that happens all the time. So, um, we can create any 3D circumstance or change through subconscious impression through, imagining even one time and seeing come we could see it come to pass. But if we're talking about maintaining a new state of consciousness, like feeling something naturally. Yeah. As you know, I'm a freelancer. In terms of getting better clients, how would manifesting new clients work with take no action slash inspired action? Having no guaranteed income makes it hard to go with the flow. That's a good question, Courtney. And you're absolutely right. Um, when you are freelancing and there's no guaranteed income, it can definitely make things feel more uncertain, um, easier to feel anxious about it. I'm definitely not going to disagree with you there. That's 100% true. Um, in terms of getting better clients, how would manifesting new clients work with take no action slash inspired action? So really, that what that means is trust that if you have imagined yourself to, I mean, first getting clear on what that looks like for you, what better clients look like for you, more clients. Yeah, if that is just getting more clients, if that's getting clients that pay more, less clients that just pay more, whatever that looks like for you, I'd get clear on that first. And then I would imagine what it would feel like, what it would be like if, say, I had, you know, these clients, this amount of clients that, I was getting referrals, things like that, right? It just tap into what that state would be like, what that feels like. Probably feels like relief. It probably removes a lot of that anxiousness around the unknown of not knowing if you're going to have enough. So the feeling of certainty, the feeling of relief that everything is going to be met because you have more than what you need, um, and do that versus trying to hustle in the 3D, right? I know hustle culture has kind of gotten to be a big thing, but it's exhausting. It's absolutely grueling. So, um, yeah. So when we say take no action, it's really we don't need to hustle ourselves to death in the 3D to get the outcome or results that we want, right? Inspired action will take place. Like when you imagine something, right, it will have to unfold through a bridge of events. Whatever that bridge of events looks like in the 3D, we don't know. We don't know. It could be anything. Typically, it's in a way that we couldn't have consciously conceived, but um, yeah, no, when it comes to inspired action with new clients, it's just, imagining what that state feels like in imagination and like keep returning to that, keep going back to that, keep getting more and more familiar with that and just letting yourself explore. And you don't have to hustle in the 3D so much. We don't have to kill ourselves to make something happen, is what that means. Hello, Juan. Hi. That's good to see you too. Hi, Missy. After a point, I have stopped visualizing before sleep. All I do is believe in the mind that I'm married to SP. I sleep with that belief by telling myself that I'm married to him. Effective. Yes. So if you have the belief that it's done, if you already have the belief that the two of you are married, you don't need to continue to do sats or continue to visualize. Yeah, you don't have to keep doing that. If it feels like that's already planted, if it feels like that belief is already there, then that's plenty effective. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. What am I what am I drinking? I'm drinking peach tea. It's green tea. Green tea. Somebody asked me I forget if it was on one of these lives or maybe I was doing a workshop, but somebody was asking if I was drinking beer while on these live calls. Like, no, it's I promise, it's green tea. It's green tea. I'm very boring these days. but it's the most delicious green tea, the most delicious you will ever find anywhere. Anywhere. Hi, Missy. Was Abdullah a real person? I mean, did he really exist? Good question, Vivian. According to accounts from people, he was a real person. Obviously, Neville talks about Abdullah because that was his mentor. Joseph Murphy was another student of Abdullah, but he is incredibly elusive. Like there have been people trying to track down and find like Abdullah's identity, who he was, and it's spooky how little has come up. Like nobody has been able to find out, like um, confirmation of any addresses, any places that he worked, birth certificates, death certificate. Like none of that has been. I mean, at least the last time I checked, there hasn't been anything found about Abdullah. Um, so it is almost like he is a figment of imagination. But I mean, Neville swears by him being real, and so does a few other people. Hi, Missy. Just jumped in regarding SP. I haven't access to social media in months. But recently, I felt inclined to look. I don't know why, but when I scrolled through posts with third party, I wasn't phased. Good. That is a good thing. Our reactions will tell us a lot. Our reactions can clue us into a lot of information as to like what we're dwelling in and what we are feeling subconsciously. So the fact that you did not get phased by the 3D, that's phenomenal. That's fantastic. Yeah, that's good indication. I love it. I love it. Thank you for the super chat, David. Thank you. Oh my god, you're so sweet. Thank you. I don't see. Did you have a question, David? I don't see a question attached. But thank you. If you do have a question, I'll be all eyes out for it. Aww. You helped me so much with my manifestation journey. So many people showed up as soon as I changed my self-concept. And I also got to know that my SP asked about me to a mutual friend. My SP will conform. You are so welcome. And yes, yes, the 3D must conform. The 3D must conform. You are so welcome. Oh, I feel like I just missed a question, but I think it disappeared. Hi, Missy. What do partial manifestations mean? I gave up and then my SP miraculously reached out after 5 months of silence, but immediately didn't respond. Now I feel attached again. Ah, I am so sorry, JT. So partial manifestations are still manifestations, and obviously everything is a manifestation, right? Um, Basically, if something shows up part way, or if we're not seeing the full result of what we wanted, perhaps it shows up and then it reverts back again. It's all just reflection of again, what are the beliefs and assumptions around this person, right? So I would take the 3D as feedback. Okay, what is this showing? Like, what am I? Is there something I'm not seeing here? When they're showing up like this, and I'm reacting as if this is true, if this is real for me, then that is indication that I'm still holding on to this assumption about this person, right? Whatever that is, perhaps that they don't commit, they don't, um, you know, they don't care about me in that way. They don't see themselves with me. Whatever stupid assumption like that we tend to hold about ourselves and this other person. Um, yeah, it's just indication of that. Or if we, you know, move into a new state of consciousness and then move back where we were, like move back into an old home, an old state of consciousness, basically our old home base, things can show up and then revert right back. Which is why it is so important to continue to maintain that new state, right? Continue to move back to that state until it feels natural and normal to you. 70 times 7. 70 times 7, as Neville said. And not even about the person. Don't just make it about the person. Like, continue to occupy that state that you desire to be and experience, where people have to start showing up and acting and reacting from that place. Does that make sense? And also check out the videos that I made about partial manifestations. I've made a couple videos. If you type in the search bar, like Missy Renee partial or partial manifestation or incomplete manifestation, you'll find some there. I've noticed a pattern. When I feel achieved with something, I often get dismissed in a very dramatic way, be it relationships, my band, my job. I never see it coming. I'm a cool dude. Nothing wrong with me. Perhaps self concept. Yeah, absolutely. So any kind of patterns, if the clear indication, the way that we can know if something is a belief, something is an assumption, is the patterns. If we have patterns, it's because of a belief. It's because of an assumption. 100 times out of 100, it's an assumption. We may not be conscious of it. We may not always be aware that we hold this belief or this assumption. It could be a very general assumption that is so general that uh, it affects all different people that we interact with, and all different areas of our life get affected by this belief. But it is always a belief. Um, so in this case, especially, I would say that this is more of perhaps a core belief, a general belief, because it's showing up in different areas of your life, as you mentioned. Um, Perhaps, not being seen, feeling like you always get dismissed, like, no matter what I do, no matter how hard I work or what I achieve, it feels like I always just get brushed off. Like, people don't really care enough, anything like that. It, from what you have written out and described, it sounds something along those general lines. But if you're ever wondering, it is self-concept 100%. Anytime we have patterns in our life, it is because of the self-concept. It's the beliefs and assumptions that we carry, always. Hello, Missy. Do you think we are doing something wrong if we manifest something for 2 years and still nothing? Your video of yesterday is awesome. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed the video yesterday. I felt it was an important one to put out there. I don't like using the words something wrong, like doing something wrong. Um, if we're aiming to manifest something for 2 years and still nothing, I mean, I'm not a fan of putting time frames on things. I know that we all want time frames on everything. We want to know exactly how long something should be before it shows up in our world. What I would say absolutely is, if it has been 2 years, you're not seeing any movement, you're not noticing changes, first, I would pay attention to, are there changes going on within you? Like, are you noticing that you're showing up differently? I would start to pay attention to the internal world more and start seeing, like, what are your reactions? What are your thoughts? What are you feeling in your day to day? And does that line up with what you desire? Does it line up? Because, we can think of something all day long, right? But if we still are holding these beliefs and assumptions, if we're still acting and reacting from, a place that we don't want to experience anymore, if we're still showing up as the old man, that's what's going to continue to manifest, right? So I would just start to pay really close attention. I would do a lot of internal observation and see, where there is a disconnect, if there is a disconnect, right? But I would look there. I wouldn't say, like, absolutely, because it's been 2 years and you've seen nothing, that you're absolutely doing something wrong. I don't like to be definitive like that, but I would start to really take a look and see how am I feeling and reacting and what are my thoughts without trying, like the natural thoughts, before we redirect them or before we flip them. What's coming up for you naturally? Because that's always going to show you the dominant state that you occupy. You are so welcome, you guys. You're so welcome. Do you have any thoughts and experience with intrusive thoughts? I find when I start visualizing, I get very distractive, intrusive thoughts that I wouldn't usually. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I have a I have a ton of experience with intrusive thoughts. I used to be nothing but intrusive thoughts. I feel that. Um, and they do typically start coming in more when we are trying to make some sort of uh, change, right? Like the resistance kicks back harder when we are like consciously trying to make a change or see a change in our lives. That's ego backlash. But when it comes to what was it? When I start visualizing, yeah. So when it comes to intrusive thoughts, that's something because of how much we've always just kind of let our mind roam places and just go where it wants to go. We've been conditioned to have that experience, basically. And it can absolutely be distracting at first. With practice, it does become easier and easier. What I would absolutely do when it comes to negative thoughts or intrusive thoughts, instead of trying to flip every single one of them, which can be absolutely exhausting, um, just observe. Just observe, right? Just you can see it, you can be aware of it, and not react to it, not like latch to it. We don't need to latch to it. We can just see the thoughts for what they are and say, okay, all right, that's fine. I'm gonna go somewhere else now, and just gently redirect your attention back. Just gently redirect your attention back to what your imaginal acts, whatever that might be. And it will take practice at first. It will. It just will. But the more and more that you practice just observation, redirection, not trying to flip it's not that you have to flip every single thought or try to like convince yourself that these negative thoughts aren't real. It's just about, okay, that's the old man. Okay, that's the old man. All right, whatever. And just be indifferent about it. And then, if you do get distracted, just come back to your imaginal scene. You can come right on back. Can I physically relive the past, go back to a point in time and continue onward? Can I physically relive the past, go back to a point in time and continue onward? How would I go about imagining this? I mean, the first thing we do need to do is go to that place in imagination. And what you're describing is effectively revision. DOE, what you're describing is imagining a point in time or a memory, but imagining it the way that you would have wanted it to go instead of perhaps the way that it went. Um, that's revision. You can check out the videos that I made about revision if you have not seen them yet. I've made a couple, and anyone who has watched me on my channel for any point for any length of time knows that I'm a huge advocate and a fan of revision. It's a powerful tool. So I would definitely check out the videos that I made about that. Is it possible to send you a full question on email or somewhere, and then you answer it in the next live Q&A? Absolutely. Absolutely. Send you a full question? I feel like the answer can benefit a lot of people. Absolutely. Yeah, if you go to the contact form on my website, all the information to get a hold of me should be down in the description box, but on my website, I have a contact form. Absolutely submit your question. Why do you charge for coaching? I don't mean to imply your time isn't valuable or anything. I just figure if you're not willing to do it for free, you wouldn't do it at all. Just manifest money. That's interesting. I mean, I charge for coaching the same reason anybody charges for coaching of any kind. I mean, that's what coaches do. Um, but it's not the only place I have money come from by far. No. And I do a lot for free. I'm here right now for free. I put a lot of free time into making content and educating people about the law. So, why do I charge for coaching? The same reason anybody charges for coaching or for, providing their time to teach us somebody else a skill. Yeah. What is that? How do you tackle resistance and feelings of being delusional? That is the million-dollar question. How do you tackle resistance and feelings of being delusional? Um, yeah, that's gonna be something that is at first, we are very controlled and conditioned by the logic mind, like, the Neville used to call it the outer man and the inner man, but, obviously not literally a man, not literally any gender, but the inner person and the outer person, right? Um, our whole lives, we've been kind of moved to act based on the 3D, based on logic, based on reason, and all of that. So naturally, when you find out about this, which goes very much against everything that you've ever been taught, it's gonna have moments where it feels, yeah, we're gonna have moments where it feels delusional. We're gonna have moments where we question ourselves. We're gonna have moments where it feels weird. Um, that's just gonna be a thing. Uh, but I'd say the way to overcome that is prove to yourself that the law is real. Prove to yourself that this isn't just crazy talk or this isn't just me being delusional or anything like that. I certainly struggle with those feelings just like a lot of people do, right? Um, and resistance and things of that sort. It's because the law is so illogical. It goes directly in the face of logic and reason because it tells you to, don't even take the 3D circumstances into consideration. Like that doesn't matter. Like the 3D doesn't matter. And when the logic mind runs on the 3D being real, that's going to go create a whole bunch of mess. But basically, the way to combat that is to continue building your faith in the law. Um, because faith is the only thing that can, you know, overcome any of that. When you see it in action, when you prove it, when you see it and have like beyond a shadow of a doubt that what we imagine is what becomes the 3D, that all goes away. That all goes away. So I would say like continue to build your faith. Continue to build your faith because and everyone should be doing that anyways. Like don't ever take my word for any of this. Don't ever take anyone's word for any of this. Don't ever just try to like believe what somebody says and just hope for the best. Like no, prove to yourself that this is real or try to disprove it. But it's when our faith is shakeable that we hit a lot of that resistance and feelings of delusion and all of that. But just know that that's a normal part of this process. It really is. Because this goes against everything that we've been taught is true and real. The beliefs and assumptions, it goes against all of that. So naturally, it's going to feel a bit challenging at times to accept it at first. So continue to prove to yourself that the law is real. Yeah. My cat is having a great sat session. Dude, my cat is a master at sats. Oh, right as I said that. Right as I said that. Oh, back to bed. Yeah, dude, my cat's the master at sleep. Master of sleep. Missy, is feeling equals knowing? Does feel equal knowing? Yes. Feeling equals knowing, yes. And I listen much better on lives than on our coaching call. Happy upcoming birthday. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yvonne, hello, hello. Sorry, guys, I got lost. My spot got lost. Bear with me one second. Uh, I've been trying to do a sat scene, but it doesn't quite click or feel right. Would it be just as effective to think what it feels like and be surrounded by it, as Greg Braden says? Absolutely. So if SATS feels difficult, perhaps you have struggles with visualizing something. Perhaps you have struggles with, bringing in the tones of reality, as Neville called them. If it doesn't, if it feels like there's just a challenge or a disconnect, you're not quite able to get to it. It's just as effective to think what it feels like and be surrounded by it. Yes, like that's really the whole point of SATS, is to help you connect to that. The whole point of any technique is to connect to you to the feeling of what that would be like. It's to connect you or tap you into that reality, that whatever that looks like to you, that state of consciousness, like whatever can help you connect to that. That's the entire point of any technique. But you can achieve that through feeling into it and just letting yourself explore this concept or idea. For me, I do have an easier time connecting to that when in a more relaxed state, like when I'm in meditation or before bed or waking up in the morning. We naturally have an easier time. It feels more. It feels like we can do it with the least amount of effort in those windows. But really, that's the point of any technique. Any technique. Just let yourself think and ruminate on what this would feel like, what it feels like, right? And put yourself there to the best of your ability. Thank you, thank you, thank you. For persisting in it for persisting in going into the Sabbath state, how do you know that you're really truthfully entered the Sabbath, where you don't need to affirm, think, visualize, etc. for desires you have? Good question. So how do we really know that we're in the Sabbath? Because there are, and I certainly had this, and many people have described it as well. There were times where I thought I was in the Sabbath. And maybe for that moment I was. Maybe for that time, maybe I had just kind of, immerse myself enough to create this temporary, um, moment of immersion, right? Like, I could maintain that state for a bit, but inevitably I fell back out again. I wasn't able to keep the Sabbath, so to speak. Uh, but I guess the way to know truly if you're in the Sabbath, you don't have any urge, any desire, any, like, it's almost like a, I don't want to do anything anymore. Like, I don't wanna do any techniques. I don't feel the need. I don't feel anything. Like, I don't feel excited to do it. I don't feel like I have to do it. It's just kind of, it's very akin to, like, when you're hungry, when your body is hungry and you need to eat food, and then you eat food and then you get full, like, your body inevitably cuts you off at a certain point and says, "All right, hey, you've had enough, like, we're good. You don't need to do this anymore." It's kind of like that. It's a similar feeling of, like, "I don't need to keep going with this." And you'll know. You'll know. A lot of people ask these questions of like, what does it feel like when you get to the Sabbath or when you it can be difficult to put the feeling into words. I try to find these analogies or ways to sort of give you guys a picture in your mind, but when you get there, it is unmistakable. Like you cannot miss these feelings when they come up for you. You can't miss them. But the best way that I probably could describe it, or at least kind of give you the idea is like when we're hungry for food and then we eat and then we get to a point where we don't need to keep eating. We're satisfied, we're good. Like we've got everything that we needed. Yeah. And then we can drop it. In the case of the Sabbath, like when we're there, it's just the feeling of full. Like we had enough to eat. Our imagination has had enough to eat. We're good. That's a good question though. When you've entered the Sabbath state, you won't even question if you're in the Sabbath state. LOL. Yeah, see, exactly. When you've entered the Sabbath, you won't even question. Like truly. The only thing I will say, the Sabbath can be off-putting for some people because it's such a natural state. It's such a some people may have an idea that the Sabbath is like euphoric or that we get these big strong emotions, we feel like incredible. And I mean it feels good, but it feels very just normal. It just feels normal. So sometimes people get worried of like, do I even still want this thing anymore? Like, what is this? They're not used to feeling anything other than that desperate state, that desire state. So when they're no longer in a state of desire, they get confused. Um, no, it's just when you're in the Sabbath, you're no longer in that state of desire, so you don't need to do anything. You'll know. I'm open to manifesting my SP back, but I struggle with feeling angry at him for how he treated me, even though I know that it was due to my own assumptions. Any tips on how to deal with this? Yeah, revision. Revision. Sarah, that's an amazing question because that's something that a lot of people grapple with, especially if somebody treated us in a way that was poorly. If somebody did something to hurt us, we absolutely want to revise it. We want to revise it because we don't need to live in that state. We don't need to live from that state anymore. Like we're doing it for ourselves. A lot of people struggle with the idea of like, oh, revision is just giving the person a pass. Like just giving shitty people a pass to be shitty. No, no, we're doing this to help us move into a place where we are going to be able to show up and thus express the 3D to show up in the way that we want, right? So this isn't about giving somebody a pass because, when they were crappy to you. This is about giving you freedom from that state and that assumption where things played out the way that they did. So I just want to be clear about that. This is not about like, oh, just let crappy people treat you like crap. Like, no, no. Obviously, don't suffer bullshit ever. Anyone, any of you. But know that when we do revision, it is for us. It is to move us into a better place, a better state, where from there we can start to express and we can start to see changes that are ideal to us. People have to show up different if we change internally. If we show up different on the inside, it will show up different on the outside. It has to. Yeah. Yeah. So it's you have every right to feel angry. Even if you know that it was due to your own assumptions, you still have that right to feel angry and how you were treated. But revision will help you to move out of that state for good. Yeah. In your day to day, do you still get bothered by other people or do you immediately forgive knowing everyone is she pushed out? Just asking so I can visualize how I should be too. Thank you for these lives. That's a good question, JT. In your day to day, do you still get bothered by people or do you immediately forgive knowing everyone is she pushed out? I mean, do I still get annoyed if people show up acting, you know, whatever? Yeah, I have moments like that. It's still that's part of the human experience. Like we have since we have so much complexity of this internal and external world, like we can impress things, we can see things show up in a way that we did not mean to plant certain seeds. People can show up in ways that are not ideal. Even knowing about the law, even understanding the law, like I know the law inside and out and I trust it inside and out. And yeah, I'll still have moments too. But I don't hold on to it. That I don't do anymore. I used to be the queen of harboring grudges. Oh man. I could harbor the mightiest grudge. I don't do that anymore. Never. I will absolutely, if somebody shows up in a way that is not ideal, I will forgive. I will because I don't want to hold that burden. I don't want to hold that grudge. I don't want to continue to experience people showing up in my reality like that. So, does it happen where I still get annoyed? Yeah, absolutely. Not the degree that it used to. By far not to the degree that yeah, I was angry all the time, basically. I was angry all the time. But, yeah. But I don't hold on to it. I don't harbor it. I will forgive. Always, because it's true. Everyone is a reflection. Everyone is always a reflection, and, if I left an impression and somebody showed up, like, that impression turned into an expression, as it does, that's not on them. That's not on the other person. So, yeah, always will use forgiveness. But do I get irritated when people drive 20 miles under in the left lane? Yeah. 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 I am so glad that these help you guys. I love these live streams too. These ones are amazing. Hello, Inked and Beautiful. When I try to manifest a new SP, my old one crosses my mind all the time. What should I do? Yeah, so having an old specific person or another person cross your mind, yeah, thoughts can be very intrusive. And in fact, that's what thoughts do. We can't seem to very much like stop our thoughts entirely, and we kind of have always just let them go all over the place. Um, that does get easier the more that you practice. With practice, that intrusive thoughts become less and less of a hindrance or an annoyance because it doesn't happen as often. Part of this practice, though, is learning to keep the focus and attention, like and being able to direct it. Right? Neville said, and one of my favorite quotes was from Neville was when he said, "The secret of all of this is a controlled imagination and well sustained attention, firmly and consistently on the thing that you want, on the wish fulfilled." So, a controlled imagination and a well sustained attention, which does take practice. It just does. When we come into this, our mind is sort of like this wild animal. It's just kind of trembled all over the place. We kind of just let it do whatever it wants to do. Um, so when we try to redirect it first, it feels very challenging. That does get easier. That does get easier. I would absolutely implement like a focused attention meditation. If you haven't already, or if you don't already in your day to day, I would do something like, a focused attention meditation, practicing redirecting when your mind wanders, bring it back, stuff like that. I would 100% recommend that, but it will get easier. Thoughts become less intrusive and you get better at like just redirecting them when they do. One, I might do that. Do I use a timer when I meditate? Not anymore. I used to. I used to. When I first started meditation, I absolutely used a timer. And it can be because we're so uh because at first we may be a little bit all over the place when getting used to meditation. Sometimes having a timer will have you like it will help you to keep that motivation to continue, right? Like give yourself, 5 minutes to start. Set a timer for 5 minutes. It's certainly yeah, one, I might hit you up, but it certainly doesn't hurt to use a timer at first. I don't anymore. I certainly did when I started. Yeah. Thank you for your video about giving up. It was so helpful specifically because I've been very good with my mental diet for months. Yeah. You are so welcome. You are so welcome. I'm glad that it seems like a lot of you enjoyed the video from yesterday, and I'm glad. I'm glad. It's I, I've been there personally myself. I know the frustration. As I mentioned in that video. Uh, yeah, practicing that art of wu wei and no action, you will be amazed at how much comes from not going off of intentional action. It sounds like the most backwards thing in the world that no action leads to more action. I know that sounds completely insane. That's the backwards law in full effect. In full effect. Yeah. How do we deal with family and friends hanging on to an old story of SP or negative circumstances? That I know is super challenging. So how do we deal with people talking about the old story? Um, I guess what happens a lot, I'm not gonna say it always happens. I don't like to use absolutes, but for many people, they what it could seem like the 3D does not like, the 3D takes a minute to catch up to the imaginal act, right? So you might be living from that state, but the 3D is still showing up from that old place. You may still get, these mirages or instances of that old story, um, before you see things finally conform. Like, that's normal. That's very normal. I'd even go to say I'd go as far to say almost everyone experiences that. Um, continue to persist in that imaginal scene. Like, don't let it bring you down if it doesn't happen immediately. Continue to live from the place that you want to see manifest in the 3D. Doesn't matter what people say. At the end of the day, it again goes back to that first principle. It doesn't matter what people say. It doesn't matter what is going on around you in this moment. What's happening in the 3D in this moment has no bearing on what is capable of happening, what is possible of happening. If I can maintain that state and stay in my imagination as that thing that I want to see manifest, as that, that circumstance, whatever it might be, if I can maintain that, the 3D has to conform to that. It has to. So don't just keep coming back to like remembering that. It's the old story. It's the old story. And it has no bearing on what is possible, whatever you're imagining has to unfold. It has to. And if it feels difficult to trust that, then I would recommend building your faith. Continue, you try the ladder technique, try the ladder exercise, and continue to show yourself that the law is real. Lost my spot. If If we are practicing the law of attraction and want to practice law of assumption, is there a waiting period? That's the first time I've heard that. Um, and I may not be understanding the question, Ramona. If you no, if there's a technique or if there's an exercise that you want to try, like SATs, revision, you can absolutely go into that anytime. There's no waiting period with the law. I mean, because the law is always in effect, right? We are always like the law is always playing out. It's never something that we just shut on or off, right? We're always creating and determining 3D circumstance based on what we are imagining and feeling in this moment. What we're feeling in this moment is what's going to become our future. And what we're experiencing in the 3D right now is effectively what we imagined in the past, if that makes sense. So you can jump on in right now. The water's fine. You can jump in right now. Yeah. If we give up on manifestation, like we are okay if it comes or not, will it still come? Mhm. If you give up on manifestation, like genuinely, I don't even care if it shows up or not, will it still come? Vast majority of the time, yes. And a lot of people will tell you, you know, when I gave up, that's when it happened, right? And I'm not saying that is how it has to go. I'm not saying you have to give up on what you're doing. You have to give up on the idea of manifestation for it to unfold. But if you plant that seed, so to speak, if you are able, like if you have been living in the end and then you drop it, like you drop the need to continue to do techniques and you jump through these hoops, absolutely it'll show up. Absolutely. Oh, good question. What is the difference between a fantasy and manifesting? I've had things where I daydream or fantasize about but never manifest. What is the difference? Good question. So what's the difference between a fantasy or a daydream and an imaginal act that will manifest? Thinking of versus thinking from. When we're daydreaming, we're thinking of something. We're thinking of that thing from a place of being separate from it, right? Like we're not we may be like mulling over something that we want to experience in the future, like that we hope to experience. So like maybe, coming from a place of like hoping or wishing that this thing will happen. We see it in like future tense, like, oh, someday when this thing happens. That's all daydreaming. And that's what we're typically used to doing. Seeing, ourself have this thing in the third person. I mean that's all examples of daydreaming. And that's really what we have been doing, at least with, 99% of the time. With the things that we do want, we tend to think of them versus from them. Hence why, we haven't seen them yet, right? Thinking from something is the premise of you're experiencing this, you're experiencing it right now. Like that this is something that you've already got, you've already maintained, or you've already achieved right now. Not hoping something to happen in the future. Like Neville used to say, if you're in New York City and you desire to be in San Francisco, don't just think of San Francisco like a town 3,000 miles west to you. Think of yourself in San Francisco right now. And New York is 3,000 miles east of you, right? So I hope that makes sense. But when you think from something, you're there. You're not separate from it. So yeah. Although persisting, there are times when I'm being harsh on myself when my mind notices the time/circumstances in 3D. How to get out of the blame game? That is a really amazing question because, oh man, I was the worst at that. And I think a lot of us are. We have a really we have this great tendency of, like, being really mean to ourselves. Um, it's pretty common. The first thing that we wanna do, which you've already been doing, is notice it. Just be aware of when that happens because it does absolutely no good. And we do it because it's a habit, and we're creatures of habits, right? Especially if you're somebody that's been more of a perfectionist, perhaps more of a type A. I mean, not necessarily saying that it has to be the case, but, if you're somebody that is naturally always been hard on yourself, this isn't gonna be an exception. So what we wanna do is just catch ourselves when we notice ourselves start to launch into that habit and disrupt that habit cycle, disrupt that habit chain, right? Um, because it's never gonna do us any good anyways. And you may have to consciously, like, cut yourself off from the blame game and really remind yourself this is doing no good and then redirect your attention. Like, you might have to be very intentional about that, but I would do that. Um, because again, what are we going to get out of being hard on ourselves? Like, being mean to ourselves is not going to get us any closer to where we want to go. It's just not. Kicking the crap out of ourselves is never going to get you what you desire. It just won't, right? So we need to just remind ourselves and have compassion for ourselves because this is all very new to us. Even if it's been a year or 2 years, that's still in the grand scheme of things, very new concepts, right? So every day we're, becoming more and more acclimated to this. And that's all that we can really ask ourselves, right? Beating ourselves up is not going to get us there faster. It's not going to do us any good. So I would just remind yourself of things like this. You're doing a great job. You're doing phenomenal. I am a little confused on what to do. Like, some suggest keep persisting and some say let it go. Like, don't you think both are contradictory things? Absolutely. Yeah, and I made a short I've made some videos talking about this, what the seeming contradiction between the persistence and letting go. Um, because it they're 2 things that mean the opposite thing. So what do we do? The answer is both. The answer is both. We want to persist in the sense that we're getting used to something new. We're getting used to a new way of thinking. We're getting used to a new way of feeling. We're getting used to a new way of imagining, right? So, like with any new practice, like learning any new skill, what be that, learning a play an instrument, learning how to play a sport, we're gonna kind of suck at it at first, and that's okay. That's okay. With practice, though, we're gonna get better and better at it. Right? So that's where the persistence part comes in. We want to continue to persist to get used to imagining in a different way, right? Um, because when we do that, we'll naturally get to a place of detachment. If we continue to imagine, if we continue to persist in living in the end and living in the wish fulfilled, you're going to naturally get to a place where you detach from the state of desiring it. Because we're moving from a state of desiring to a state of having. That's where the detachment part comes in. We need to detach from desiring and attach to being and having it. So that's where that comes in. But that happens naturally. Trying to force ourselves to detach is likely not going to give us an outcome that we want. Um, yeah. So that's sort of the difference. So it's both. It's persist in your imaginal acts, persist in living in the end, so to speak, until you naturally will get to a place where you detach from that state of desiring it. Like, you get full, you're good. You don't need to keep persisting because you're already there, if that makes sense. So, good question. It's both. Is the Sabbath knowing that it's going to happen? Because there is a big confusion between Sabbath and giving up because you're burned out. Absolutely, and I agree. Those are not the same thing. That's a really good question. So there is so I guess the difference between being in the Sabbath and feeling burned out and giving up because you are burned out and frustrated is, yeah, that it's not always a feeling of, like, absolute certainty. I don't wanna say it's always a strong conviction, but it is a much more comfortable place. It's you do have a sense of knowing. You do have a sense of everything's working out for me just as it should. Yeah, I would say that's the difference. I just don't wanna I don't wanna leave the impression that there needs to be, like, an unmovable conviction, right? Because sometimes you do get that, sometimes you do, but most it's very it's almost subtle how much we're just like, "I'm good." The Sabbath is just like, "You're good. You don't need to keep doing it because 'cause you're good. You're like, there's nothing left to do." That's sort of the feeling, whereas burnout is, you know, it's the natural response of trying too hard. When we try to manifest, when we try to, like, force ourselves to leave subconscious impressions, when we try to, like, you know, work hard at this, that's where the burnout comes from. And the 2 things feel very different. The Sabbath and giving up because you're frustrated and burned out, those are 2 very different things, yeah. You'll know the difference. Alright. I got time for maybe 1 more question. 1 or 2 more questions, guys. Um, hey, Mike. Hi, Missy. I still haven't seen evidence of my revision, but it's so strange. New memories of things that I haven't imagined are popping up in my mind. But it's all be good because they are enjoyable. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, Melanie. New memories. Yep, that's what's gonna happen. When you revise, even you may not even see evidence in your 3D of the revision, but you'll start having new memories come up that you're like, "Wait, I never imagined that. I never imagined that." Where like, memories from that new revised act, yeah, that's totally gonna happen. That's totally gonna happen. That's so cool. Revision is so cool. You are so welcome, guys. Missy, today I had a big moment that showed me how powerful I am. I've learned a lot with you in your lives. Thank you. I feel great. The law never fails. I love it, Vivian. That's amazing. Yay! Yay! Oh my God, Marie, hi. I'm sorry. I keep calling you Mari. I'm sorry. I keep calling you Marie. Mari, it's so good to see you. You are so sweet. Ah! For those that can afford it, I super recommend the group coaching course. My life has completely changed for the better, night and day. Oh my God, I love you so much, and I'm so happy. I love these updates. These are fantastic, you guys. This is why I love what I do so much. So much. Do you think you'll become one with the promise in this lifetime? Yes, I do. Absolutely. And everybody will experience the promise at one point. Everybody, like, hence why it's called the promise. It's God's promise to us that we will awaken. All of us will. Um, I know there's not a whole lot of talk and emphasis on the promise. A lot more people are naturally more inclined to want to learn about the law, which is great. But everybody will experience the promise. 100%. I lost my spot again. I've been trying to manifest my ex back. So far, we've been texting here and there, but 3 weeks ago, he didn't reply back, so I figured he'd text me on my B-day on Friday, but nothing. And now I'm spiraling. I'm so sorry, Riri. I know. So, eh, significant dates I know can be especially challenging. Like, I totally get it. Birthdays, anniversary dates, holidays, those days can be especially hard for us. I more than understand that. Um, and I am so sorry, first and foremost. I know that sucks. I would absolutely revise that. Like, as soon as if you need to have a moment, if you need to cry, if you need to get it out, like, let yourself have that moment. It's okay. Once you once you've kind of let it out, once you've, maybe cried or did what you needed to do, you're starting to feel maybe a bit more neutral, a bit better. I would come back and I would revise that and imagine that he did message you. Imagine that he did reach out to you on your birthday. Imagine what you would have ideally wanted to have happen instead, right? Um, break the spiral, basically. Break the spiral. Um, how this thing got triggered, how this thing went off, revise it. 100% I would recommend doing that. And don't forget the first principle either, guys. What is the one main thing that we're taught with the law of assumption? Like, if you had to summarize in one sentence, what do we do and don't do? We don't take the 3D as final. We don't react and take the 3D as final. The 3D is changeable and malleable as clay. None of that happened. None of that, whatever happens out here doesn't matter. Never matters, never matters, never matters. Right? So we need to come back to this. We need to come back to this. This is a practice of reconditioning the attachment to the 3D and being so fixated on what's going on out here and all the crap in the outside world. No, get familiar with the new man, with the new world, with the new place in your imagination. Like, prepare that place for you and continue to go back there. Continue to go back there. And it's going to feel better and better to do. It's gonna feel more enjoyable, and you're gonna find you're naturally gonna wanna go there. You're naturally gonna want to like, you're gonna look forward to it. You're gonna be excited to go to that place that you've prepared in imagination. You want it to get to that point, and when that happens, you're gonna notice everything around you is changing. Everything on the outside has like, it is inevitable. Whatever we imagine on the inside and continue to imagine is going to be what happens on the outside every time. So, regardless, I would revise that event. Imagine that he did reach out for your birthday. Imagine, like, what would have been the ideal circumstance that came from that? What would have been the course of action that came from that? And go there in imagination and continue to go back to that. And always remember the first principle. Be still and remember who you are. The 3D is at your mercy, not the other way around. Absolutely, yeah. No, guys, I have a group coaching program that actually starts here very soon. All that information down in the description box. Mari, I'm so happy to hear about your update. That is so awesome. Thank you, JT. You are so welcome. Yes, okay. On that note, guys, I just noticed the time. I do have to get going. Oh, but this has been so much fun. I think this may have been the longest Q&A I've done yet. 2 hours. Maybe just shy of 2 hours. This has been so much fun, you guys. Thank you again so much for joining me. Love to all of you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and I will hopefully see you back here soon. Maybe next week. Take care, guys.